Hello, and welcome to Skirmish Turf. I'll be taking you through a world building project of mine that takes place in a post-fantasy world scarred by radiation, pollution, and war. A world where the arrogance of humanity has led itself to believe they could control the world, when it is the world that controls them. Skirmish Turf doesn't just have humans though. There are a few other intelligent races that call this planet home, one of which was created by the very gods that humanity overthrew. That race was the Trawlk. To put into layman's terms, they're fishmen. A common fantasy trope I wanted to subvert. But why? Well, as with anything I babble about, context is needed. The idea of what lives in the water coming to land has fascinated me for a while, as I'm sure you could have guessed from my first video. I already had the starfish zombies, so while the more terrifying aspect of that angle was covered, I wanted something a bit more mundane but still threatening. The first draft, so to speak, was the Podmalsites, a race of squid people. Truth is, they were meant for an unrelated project, but I thought about retooling them for this world. The more I pondered it though, the less comfortable with it I was. Why did they exist? And why did they walk on land? What would drive them to interact with other races, as opposed to staying in their underwater domain? Additionally, their biotechnology was not fitting to Skirmish Turf, so they had to go. The concept of the aquatic race kept creeping back in though, so I knew I had to pick something. But what? Well, obviously a fish, but I couldn't do sharks because they would be cliché. Well, why not piranhas? An odd pick at first. They're not very intelligent and are seen only as ravenous carnivores. The more I investigated it though, the more sense it made. While not smart, piranhas are social creatures, forming shoals to act as protection and occasionally hunting parties. On that note, the red-bellied biters aren't as vicious as fiction plays them to be. If you've been on the internet for long enough, I'm sure you've heard this, but piranhas are more likely to swim away from people, because they are by far not the scariest thing in the Amazon River. They're also omnivorous and have a tendency to feed on carrion more often. So, I began doing rough sketches. I normally wouldn't show this part of the creation, but I felt it necessary to capture to explain the design process. I wanted the Piranha People to resemble fish while also making it very clear that they're capable of walking on land. Two very different functions, but far from difficult to achieve. The first one was way too frog-like for my taste. I like frogs, but it wasn't what I was going for. I realized to avoid the toad look, I would have to shorten the neck and give it less digits on each hand. So I went ahead and did that. It wasn't perfect, but as a template, it worked. I then experimented with adding various poses and clothing for the Trawlk. I thought about including the designs of other predatory fish, such as the Congo tigerfish. While piranhas aren't as vicious as Roger Corman would have you believe, tigerfish absolutely are. They're one of the hardest freshwater fish to catch in the world. To explain the longer snout, I'd say the explanation is that this culture of Trawlk practices snout elongation, in which the parents bound the face of their spawn tightly to misshape them. A similar practice was done to human heads throughout the world. One thing I noticed about the design was that it didn't give the Trawlk discernible shoulders. Instead of changing that, I thought about how a shirt might fit on a being with no shoulders to place a strap. I went with a collar around the neck since it's much more muscular and could withstand the pressure of having a belt around that region. I experimented with some armor, equipment, and even a vehicle. The buzzsaws were way too much, but I like most of it. But after all of that, I knew it was time to get working on the final design. I took what I liked about the rough sketches and made improvements where I desired. I wanted to incorporate the aquatic origins of the Trawlk while making it seem like nothing would hinder their ability to traverse terrain. A tail was out of the question, but residual fins weren't. The idea is that the gods that molded them were able to make them terrestrial, but due to a lack of time or the difficulty in the process, mistakes were made. One such mistake is in their nails, or rather, claws? Just so I could be pretentious, I'll call them digit scales. Either way, the Trawlk only have digit scales on 2 of their fingers and toes for each hand and foot. I got this from crocodilians, which have a similar thing going on. This sent me down a rabbit hole to figure out why, and the answer is, we have no idea. It's believed that it helps them feel in the water, but the truth is up in the air. Either way, I liked it, so I kept it. The thing I liked the most was the body shape. I don't know why, but it speaks to me. It manages to capture the look I was going for with the idea of a bipedal walking piranha. It stands largely upright, but still manages to look hunched forward, as if ready to strike at any given moment. The legs have good anatomy, at least in my eyes, and I even don't hate how the forward-facing head looks. Drawing forward-facing creatures with snouts is always a bit tricky, but I think it looks alright. The gills were something I thought about getting rid of entirely. Then the thought occurred to me of being able to ambush from water sources, so it was kept. They possess lungs, but can also breathe through gills underwater, albeit not as efficiently as normal fish. They can also only breathe in freshwater, so the Trawlk can still drown in salt water. Trawlk's skin is also more specialized to hold in moisture as opposed to being purely aerodynamic like normal overlapping fish scales. I knew drawing individual fish scales would suck, so I tried cheating by putting spots to act as highlights. I didn't like how this looked, so I went with a skin texture that was a mix of fish, lizard, and crocodile skin. It turned out okay. So now that I've subjected you all to the voices in my head that I call my thought process, it's time to answer why. Why do fish people exist in the world of skirmish turf? Everything goes back to the ancient days of gods. Immortals without discipline, the deities were monsters, gifting living things to their creations as toys to abuse. Humanity, the Valmeg, and the Boarmen, more on them in the future, all rised up and rebel, using forbidden magics to split the atom. What first started as merely another rebellion quickly spiraled into the uprooting of the very foundations this world ran on. The gods initially had little interference with the conflict. They are confident that their children, the dwarves, elves, and orcs, could handle such an uprising. Arrogance is the assurance of defeat, and soon the pampered armies fell, and the slave masters were slaughtered. The world trees that connected the realms of the living and the divine were evaporated in atomic fire, and the magic of this realm was rapidly vanishing. The gods became desperate. The races that once made up their armies were extinct, with no traces of their bones or even artwork to remember them by. The gods needed something to fight and needed it quickly. The goddess of rivers, Myro Kulig, desperately took the piranhas that swam the jungles of this world and made them into warriors destined to walk the land. With the dwindling magic that this world had, she formed legs from fins, gave them tongues in which to speak, gave them intelligence in which they could form strategies, and filled their hearts with a desire for obedience and glory. With a new breed of soldier at their disposal, the gods sent them forward to ravage the thralls who dared to seek freedom. Trawlk, despite their status as new blood, proved to be efficient killers. Their smaller sizes, standing at 3 to 4 feet at most, agility, bulk, and ambush ability made them terrifying opponents. Yet despite their valiant efforts, it was too little too late. The last of the world trees were destroyed, and with them the magic of skirmish turf. The gods fell from the heavens and their bodies would rot, mutating all animals that feasted on them. Yet, although the Trawlk failed at their created intent, they would find new purpose. Despite the persecution against them, the Trawlk could reproduce quickly and usually lived in heavily flooded areas where most folk would rather not. The Trawlk would soon become a normal part of this world, as normal as a world with vampires, dinosaurs evolved from dragons, giant rats, and parasitic starfish that turn things into zombies can be. In case you're wondering, the Trawlk despise the star dead. Due to their numbers and close proximity to water, the Trawlk are most likely to become infected by the star dead. Trawlk could be found on all continents in skirmish turf. As time has gone on, they have diversified to have many different colors and cultures. As shown in the sketches, some Trawlk practice face elongation. Trawlk don't live very long lives, only living 35 to 42 years. As such, they have a very go-getter attitude in life and are always trying to get something done. They need a higher calling, and due to their inherent nature for obedience and fast spawn rates, this means that very few Trawlk countries don't have massive armies. They lost the war they were created for, so now they find wars for themselves. And they win. So yeah, the Trawlk, a race of piranha people created for war. While not as mean as many think, they are quick to anger and even quicker to invade. I hope you enjoyed this one. I stalled way more than I would like to admit making this, but I still found the design process fun. I like to say the next video will come out sooner, but that would be a lie. I have something bigger I'm working on, so it'll be a while before I upload again. Although at this rate, I'm sure you're used to that. Until then, I bid you all farewell, and until next time, stay safe, and have a good one.